So you can't see this, but hopefully you can hear it. Behind every Boise State Public Radio podcast is a team working hard to bring you stories that matter. So if you value podcasts like this one, please support them. Hit donate at boisestatepublicradio.org. Thanks.
It's the Connector Idaho Daily News for your Friday, July 10th. I'm Troy Oppie. Here are today's headlines. Public lands advocates in Valley County say they're embracing a proposed land swap around McCall with the U.S. Forest Service. Thousands of Snake River Trust water users in southwest Idaho are breathing a little easier. There will not be curtailments for them this year. And two of the most high-profile cycling events in the state are in Boise this weekend. But we start this morning with an arrest in this week's homicide on the Boise greenbelt. In a news release late yesterday, police say they identified and detained 41-year-old Ross Allen Wardlaw Thursday afternoon, charging him with first-degree murder. Police say evidence showed he attacked victim Jordan Harbst shortly after midnight Monday morning on the greenbelt near 11th, stabbing Harbst to death. Police say there is no known connection between the two men, and there was no apparent altercation prior to the stabbing. Boise Police Chief Chris Dennison called the incident a rare crime for the city. Wardlaw had recently appeared in a local television news story about cooling centers and identified himself as a frequent guest at a local homeless shelter. Fire crews in the Boise foothills continue to make progress on the Claremont fire, which did not grow beyond previous boundaries yesterday. Preventative burns continued along Boise Ridge Road and the unexploded ordnance area. Road closures and area closures in that region of the fire remain in place. Mop-up is happening in some previously burned areas of the fire, with containment still estimated to be complete by Sunday evening. A fast-moving grass and brush fire just east of Bellevue yesterday forced Level 2 evacuation warnings for the Slaughterhouse neighborhood on the east side of town. The fire was reported around 5:30 in Muldoon Canyon and was estimated at 300 acres just a couple hours later. It's been named the Murphy Fire. Local and federal firefighters responded, including with air support. The Blaine County Sheriff's Office kept the Level 2 evacuation warning in place overnight and plan to reevaluate it this morning. The Red Cross of Idaho and East Oregon, along with other emergency response volunteer organizations, are hosting an all-day resource fair today in Caldwell for individuals and families affected by flooding in the June 26th storm. The event starts this morning at 10 a.m. It's at the Salvation Army on East Chicago Street in Caldwell. They'll have cleanup supplies, housing resources, insurance information, food and supply assistance, and more. It runs until 7 o'clock tonight. United Payette, a coalition of businesses, property owners, and outdoor advocates, is embracing a proposed land swap around McCall with the U.S. Forest Service. As James Dawson reports, the endorsement comes after the group opposed a different deal with a private developer.
The Idaho Department of Lands manages nearly 16,000 acres of state endowment land around Payette Lake, the value of which has far outpaced the return it gets by selling logging rights. In 2021, the agency proposed swapping the land with a private developer, which it ultimately rejected after significant public outcry. United Payette was among them. One of its steering committee members, Craig Utter, says Idaho is finding out the consequences of public land suddenly becoming private with its influx of new residents.
It goes quick. It doesn't take long to get things divided up, and those large, expansive things you thought were going to be there forever disappear.
He says exchanging this land around Payette Lake with the Forest Service would maintain public access, along with ensuring watershed quality in the area is maintained by a single agency. State officials are working on appraising the land, which the McCall Star News reports could be roughly $200 million. Depending on the price, the Department of Lands could get up to 150,000 acres from the Forest Service. James Dawson, Boise State Public Radio News.
Micron announced a new manufacturing partnership with a Texas-based company. Micron will invest $500 million in Global Wafers Company Limited, which makes the silicone wafers Micron needs to make semiconductor chips. The agreement goes beyond the investment with a 10-year production contract, providing Micron with wafer capacity it needs to maintain planned output once fabrication sites in Boise and New York come online. Micron says the investment is the first in up to a $3 billion amount it will spend to bolster the domestic semiconductor industry. Traders liked the deal, sending Micron stock briefly back above $1,000 a share yesterday before it settled back down below the four-figure threshold. Separately, Micron yesterday celebrated the ceremonial first concrete pour at its upstate New York megafab site. 4,000 Snake River Trust water users in southwest Idaho can breathe a little easier after Idaho Power said it would not recommend curtailments as flows on the Snake River over Swan Falls Dam at the Murphy Gauge continue to fall toward historic lows. The Swan Falls settlement of 1984 set 3,900 cubic feet per second as the minimum before Idaho Power would need its hydroelectric share protected at the expense of other water users. That minimum has never been reached, but flows are currently only 4,600 CFS, according to the Idaho Department of Water Resources. In a news release, IDWR says Governor Brad Little and Idaho Power agreed that curtailments now would only add to hardships facing farmers and ranchers that are depending on that water, and the governor directed IDWR to find storage water to offset low river flows. He's also directed the department to establish a group of stakeholders to study the problem and propose potential long-term solutions. Water tests at Boise's Esther Simplot Park show elevated levels of E. coli bacteria, and City Parks and Recreation has posted signage warning the water is not safe for swimming or wading. River-fed ponds at Esther Simplot and Quinn's Pond and elsewhere are tested weekly and do occasionally close due to contaminants. The Parks Department says it's working to improve water quality in those locations, but reminds residents that recreating in city ponds is always at your own risk. You might be one of thousands of Idahoans still waiting on your tax refund. 20% more households got state income tax refunds this year, and they were larger by about 22%. That change has been driven by changes to the federal tax code in last year's One Big Beautiful Bill, so much so that for the second straight year, the account Idaho uses to pay out tax refunds needed to be replenished. KTVB reports that's why so many refunds are still outstanding. That account is typically funded by setting aside 20% of income tax received, but payments were going out faster than receipts. The State Board of Examiners last month approved an additional $234 million for that account this year to be taken out of the state's general fund. About a quarter of that amount was transferred to start the fiscal year July 1st, and now remaining refunds are expected to be delivered by July 15th for taxpayers using direct deposit. Paper check refunds will take a little longer. It is a big cycling weekend around here with two of Idaho's highest profile cycling events in Boise this weekend. George Prentice is here with a preview this morning.
It will be before sunrise tomorrow when traffic managers begin closing the roads around the Idaho State House. That for Saturday's Twilight Criterium. Carly May is the event director.
We're one of the top 6 national criterium races in the United States, which is what drives the number of pro athletes that we have. It's pretty special to be elevated into this category.
A day full of cycling begins with a morning of kids races. There will be a 2-lap race for 9 and 10-year-olds, 1-lap races for 5, 6, 7, and 8-year-olds, and perhaps the cutest event of the summer, a half-lap race for 3 and 4-year-olds. And yes, training wheels are allowed. The afternoon is filled with amateur races featuring some of the region's best cyclists. Afternoon inches toward twilight, and then the pros roll in. Boise's Twilight Criterium is called the fastest 4 corners in the nation, as those pros risk crashing into huge bales of hay all around the capital. Come Sunday morning, some of the best endurance cyclists, amateurs, pros, even Olympians, take on the Bogus Basin Hill Climb. In its 54th year, it's the 3rd oldest cycling hill climb in the U.S. George Prentice, Boise State Public Radio News.
The NCAA named Wichita in Kansas as the second host city for opening round NCAA men's basketball tournament games. Wichita will join Dayton, Ohio. A second site was needed as the tournament expands from 68 to 76 teams starting this coming season. Boise State was among the host sites that had applied to be the new opening round location, but the NCAA said its choice was largely driven by Wichita's Mid-America location in relative proximity to a lot of teams and fan bases which might have to travel on short notice. Athletic Club Boise back on the home pitch this weekend, hosting Sacramento Republic FC Saturday in a USL Cup match. Sacramento is in 5th place in the Championship Division's Western Conference standings. Kickoff at 7:30 at AC Boise Stadium at Expo, Idaho. And that's your connector on this Friday. Friendly reminder, we still want your feedback in our annual listener survey. How do you use technology to listen to the radio? That includes listening to this very podcast. It also includes things like streaming and use of the Boise State Public Radio app. Your feedback helps us make a better radio station. Take our survey right now. It's at boisestatepublicradio.org. The weekend is upon us, my friends. I'm Troy Oppie. I hope it's enjoyable for you. And as always, make it a great day.
Each story you hear on Planet Money starts with a question. What happens if we refund tariffs? Why are groceries so expensive? At NPR, we stand for your right to be curious, because the forces shaping our world can be hard to see. Follow NPR's Planet Money wherever you get your podcasts and start seeing how the economy really works.